Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Reliance Talk. This is episode number 3, and the topic today is called Google Reliance. And I'll explain a little bit more about that here in a minute. But first, before we start, I wanted to take a few minutes and explain a few things. Now, if you want to skip ahead, I'm going to put the time on the screen where you can skip ahead and skip all this. But what I wanted to explain is what this series of shows is all about. Most of my shows, or most of my videos that I've uploaded in the past have been fairly fact-based. Obviously, I make mistakes here and there in my facts, but for the most part, what I'm saying is that they're black and white, and I'm telling you how to do something, or going through a step-by-step guide, or making an educational video to explain how solar works, or take you through a project, something like that. It's kind of more non-fiction, basically. But with this series, I'm not really using that kind of format. What I want to do is, I don't want to tell you how to do something or what to think or what to believe. I'm not trying to educate you. I'm not trying to teach you anything new necessarily. What I'm trying to do is spark some ideas in your head of some ideas you may be able to use in your own self-reliance journey to try to do something better, or to try to take a different approach to something, or try something you maybe would have never tried before. So I'm just going to give you my thoughts on a subject, and you can agree or disagree, and that's totally fine. But hopefully you'll keep an open mind and kind of be open to a different perspective and different ideas that I might have that might be helpful to you. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the subject today. That is Google Reliance. What I mean by that term, I made that up, but it's basically doing things yourself, but looking them up. Always looking for a how-to guide, watching a YouTube video on how to do something before you start. That is good. That's a great step, but it's not truly self-reliance. And it's good only for so long. Eventually it becomes a crutch that you're going to have to get yourself out of. When I first got started doing things myself, I was probably about 19-ish, 18, 19. And my dad wasn't, when I grew up, I really didn't do a lot of things like this. My dad isn't a do-it-yourselfer. He could operate tools. He could be handy when he needed to be, but that really wasn't his style. And so it wasn't until I met a few friends later in life. I don't know if he's going to watch this video, but one of them is my friend Brandon. So hi Brandon, who is a genius, super smart guy. And then also another friend that I met later, whose name was Jeff. But anyway, those two guys, we were primarily interested in cars back then. I loved to modify cars and play with cars. This was kind of back in the Fast and Furious days, if you remember those. But anyways, I love to do these projects with my two friends, Brandon and Jeff. But I wasn't super confident doing them myself. In fact, I didn't really try any major do-it-yourself projects on my cars for years after that. And I slowly had to, the problem was I was a little bit nervous. I was afraid that I was going to screw something up, that I would take apart my car and couldn't put it back together again or whatever. And I had to slowly overcome that fear of failure and break myself out of that always looking something up or always having to have somebody with me that knew more than I did. And I'm still not completely out of that phase, I'll be honest with you, but I'm working on that. I'm trying to push myself to try new things and to break through that anxiety and fear to tackle projects on my own. So why am I taking a whole episode to talk about this Google Reliance thing, and why is it a bad thing? There's a few reasons. Number one, you can look like a complete idiot when people look to you as the do-it-yourself guy and you're looking stuff up. One example that I have, I've been in IT for over 20 years, and I worked for this company. I'm not going to name any names, but I worked for a company recently, several years ago, where one of the technicians who was on site with a customer was on their phone looking up how to do something with the network or the server or something. I don't remember what it was. And the customer was upset. Here was somebody who they were paying a lot of money to be on site to fix something, and they didn't look competent. Now, whether that person was just looking something up real quick or whatever, it doesn't matter. The perception was to somebody else that this guy doesn't know what they're doing. And so that may be a problem for you. That may you may lose confidence from other people, or from a customer, or whatever. So you want to try to get out of that phase of always looking something up, always the knee-jerk reaction of looking up instructions every single time. Number two, I firmly believe, and I've had this happen multiple times over the last several years, but there's going to be times when you just can't look something up. There's going to be times where your phone doesn't work. There's going to be times when your battery runs out. There's going to be times when your car breaks down in the middle of nowhere and you need to troubleshoot an electrical problem in your car. Or maybe a natural disaster hits and knocks out the internet and the power in your home, and you can't look something up like you normally would. Those are realistic scenarios that do happen, and so you need to at least have some level of confidence in yourself to be able to troubleshoot and figure things out on your own. I'm getting into personal beliefs now, and you can agree or disagree with me here, but I personally believe that we're headed for times in the future, whether you're in the United States or Europe or wherever you're at, but I believe in our future as Western society, or anywhere in the world, quite frankly, but that you're not going to have access to internet for long periods of time. It may be unreliable, or it may just be not available altogether. So whether that's because of an EMP or a large-scale natural disaster, or a war, a civil war, a world war, whatever, we are naive to think that can't happen to us. I think that the war in Ukraine is showing us that those types of conflicts can still happen. They can break into larger scale. And what's the first thing that they're going to do? They're going to try to disrupt communications. They're going to try to disrupt the power grid, those types of things. And that's going to affect citizens. So anyway, whether that's a threat, whatever it is, we've seen natural disasters increase in frequency and so forth. So there will be times in your life, I can almost promise you, that you will not have access to internet for an extended period of time. Number three, not everything that you find online is accurate. So if you are in the habit of always looking up step-by-step instructions to everything, you will eventually find a guide that doesn't work, that's bad information, that is a complete fail. I've had that happen to me personally. And so you have to have the ability to know enough about something, a subject, to be able to discern whether this is a good guide or a bad guide or whatever. I see this all the time, especially with solar and batteries and things like that. You'll look up, there will be some easy guide that somebody made to something, and it doesn't use factual information, or it skips steps or something, and you need to be competent enough to know, oh, okay, they just skipped some steps here. What do I do? Or I don't really agree with what they're doing there. I think that's going to break something. You need to be able to know that kind of stuff. So the last thing let's talk about is kind of how to graduate from this phase. What are some things you can do to kind of get out of the habit of always looking something up or being internet dependent for your projects? Number one is kind of a baby step. Try to do one project completely on your own. Don't look up anything, and try to figure it out completely on your own. Now, if you fail a little bit and cheat and look something up along the way, that's fine, but at least you tried, and you probably will learn some things along the way. You'll learn just how much you don't know, or you'll learn, hey, I got a lot farther than I thought I did, or something like that. You will gain some experience and some confidence that will help you down the road. And then maybe next time you can try again and go a little bit further. So there's really no fear there. You can always look something up later, but try one project completely on your own and try to get some confidence from that. Number two, this is kind of a thought exercise, and this applies to other things. I've adopted these philosophies in my own personal life, trying to push past some anxiety and fear and things. But think about the absolute worst case scenario of failing a project or failing to do something or whatever. Let's say you're replacing a part, an alternator in your engine or something. What is the absolute worst case of failing in that attempt? And what does that look like? So, or maybe, okay, I can't get it all back together and I have to get my car towed to a shop and they have to put it back together. What is that? What does it look like? How much does it cost? All that kind of stuff. And along with that, how likely is that scenario? Realistically, how likely is that scenario? What you're going to find with almost everything is that the worst case scenario is not very likely at all, is not as bad as you think it's going to be, and that you're much, much, much more likely to succeed in some degree, whether it's a complete success or a partial success. You are more likely to, when you're replacing that alternator, you're more likely to get it most of the way there, get stumped, and then have to look something up and go back and fix it yourself. That's the more likely scenario. The least likely scenario is you screw things up so bad you have to tow your vehicle to a shop. That's really not that likely. But if it is, how much does that cost? Is it $150 to get your car towed? What's the real worst case scenario? When you go through that exercise, it stops being quite as scary. Even if the worst case were to happen, you at least have some idea of what that looks like and what to do in that case. And then last but not least, this is something I haven't really done a very good job myself yet, but I'm working on. But start a library. And what I mean by that is two things. Take notes on your projects, whether that's written notes or a digital record, whatever. I would prefer a written myself because, again, I may not have access to a device that has that information, or the internet may not be available, whatever. But take notes on your projects that you can look back on, especially projects that you've done that you do over and over again, like changing the oil on your car or cleaning the carburetor on your generator or something like that. Take some notes so that you're relying back upon yourself and your experiences with previous jobs and not constantly looking something up on Google. And by extension to that, the second part is start accumulating books that you can refer to. Now, obviously, that's not complete self-reliance because you're reliant, you'd be referring to a book. But it does decrease your internet dependence so that if something were to happen, if there was a disaster, if the crap hits the fan, you've got a book reference like a repair manual or a book on gardening to know when to plant certain seeds, a book on electricity to know how to troubleshoot a circuit, a book on canning to know what's the temperature and procedure to can tomatoes. Anything like that, when you've got your own library in your home, that's a lot of a lot of this is confidence, guys. This is knowing that you either have the competency and experience yourself to do something, or you have the resources available in your home, written down or printed out or saved somehow, that you can do more and more and more things yourself. And that's a big thing. Confidence is a big thing in self-reliance. Anyway, hopefully you learned some things. Hopefully that sparked some ideas for you guys, and I hope you enjoyed the content. Leave a comment below and a thumbs up if you found it helpful. Thanks.